Well, again, welcome. I'm Mike Haggerty along with Mike Clayton for another edition of Heads Up with our National Wrestling Coaches Council. And again, another superstar of a guest. We have Clarissa Chun with us. Clarissa, don't you shake your head. You're a superstar. We all know it. So I tell you, I was really excited. You know, Mike and I have kicked around about our guest over the last couple of weeks. And he mentioned you, and it was like, yes, right away. Let's get her on here because, you serve a unique and special role within inside of USA Wrestling as a assistant coach with the National Women's Freestyle Program. We just come off of the heels of the Olympic trials, and there's so much going on right now. And I believe, as you mentioned, you're actually at a training camp. So, oh my gosh, do we have a lot to talk about? Why don't we just start off with just kind of tell us what's going on in your world right now, and we'll break it up from there. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Thanks, guys, for having me. I laugh because you say superstar. Some of the younger athletes have no idea, like, who I am, but that I'm Coach Clarissa Chun, right? Like,
do I need to come out there and talk to them?
Yeah, I'm not one that I'm like, hi, I'm Clarissa Chun, I've done this, I've done that. No, I'm coach to them, the younger athletes, and it's funny sometimes when, sometimes it's like, oh, maybe it is our job. We should be educating them, like, who we are and what we've done. And I think just growing up, like, I've grown up to, be humble and have a little bit of humility. So it's awkward for me to like talk about myself in that way, but thank you for having me on your podcast. And we are here in Colorado Springs at our first Olympic team training camp, and it's actually a joint training camp with the men's freestyle team. So I don't know that it's happened in the past where we've had Olympic team training camps going on at the same time, maybe at the training center, but this camp is our first camp. And it's been going great. Tuesday night was an awesome practice, great energy. Both the men's and women's freestyle trained together in the same practice. I think that was probably the first time that has actually happened. I would say Tamara Mensah wrestled with Joey McKenna in that practice. Adeline Gray and Jordan Burroughs wrestled together at practice, and Jakara and Jaden. So the guys mixed in with the women. And I think Jordan said that was the first time he wrestled a female. And that was so fun and exciting. The energy was through the roof. It was so fun. It was, I hope someone got some kind of footage of that.
That's fantastic. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And I didn't actually know that. I knew that you guys were out there at the same time together. I did not know that you actually ran a practice together. That would be a unique experience and really exciting. But what else is going on that's a little different now that we're kind of working in this COVID experience? Are there some other things that are different? I know that you guys are training off grounds and doing some other things. Can you fill us in a little bit on that as well?
Yeah, with COVID, there's certain guidelines and protocols, and each location we can go to will have different rules. Unfortunately, we chose to do offsite from the training center because of the protocols. It's just a little bit challenging to get on site. But we had protocols coming in because the main thing is we want everyone like safe and healthy, coming in to camp, and we don't want anyone leaving camp sick or whatnot. So we do have like protocols where they have to test negative before arriving and testing negative upon arrival as well. And just kind of trying to create this bubble here at the resort where they lift here, they train here, cardio here, whatever they need to eat here. The food is great. And yeah, I think it's going good. I'm excited for the next camp coming up, Olympic team training camp, because all three styles will be together, like men's freestyle, men's Greco, and women's. So that'll be exciting.
And that's probably that. Has that happened? Do you ever remember that happening? Yeah.
I don't remember that ever happening. Yeah.
So when you were growing up, did you have to wrestle a lot of boys? I know you didn't. You were doing judo a lot and water polo when you were younger, and then kind of got into wrestling a little later. So how did you have to wrestle a lot of boys growing up?
Yeah, I did. And So Hawaii was the first state that sanctioned girls wrestling. And the year that I started, it was the pilot year. So it was just me and one other female on my team for a women's team or girls team. So I wrestled boys. I went out for the boys team, wrestled 103 boys in the dual meets. And it was like nothing new to me because judo, it's very common to train like with guys. Guys and girls train together all the time. It's not uncommon where guys only go with guys and girls only go with girls, you know? So it wasn't much different for me. So I thought I could do this. Why not take on the guys?
Do you think that ever gave you an advantage when you started to wrestle more with girls? Is that part of the benefit of this camp, or is it? Because I know it goes both ways. The guys are going to learn from the girls, and the girls are going to learn from the guys.
You know, I think that's what's the most, like, that's what's the fun part about being here together is the sharing of the minds, right? Like, everyone's asking everyone, like, hey, you know, like, I know you do this. Well, how do you do your throw by? How do you do, you know, like, everyone's helping everyone in the room. And I think that's so great. Like, you've got like top level athletes asking each other, like learning, like there's no egos. Everyone's just in the room having fun, wanting to learn, wanting to share, you know, and I think that's what's so great about it, you know. So it's not like, it's never happened where I feel like it's like coming from, you know, being in the women's wrestling program, we've always worked so hard to try to earn and gain respect from the men, you know, I'll say. It was always like, we would always have second dibs on the mat. We would all, you know what I mean? Like I don't think we were ever looked at like that we could share the mat space necessarily, you know, like, and I would say that was probably at my start of freestyle, you know, like, and each year it was, you could see the interaction between the men and women's teams working together and coming together. But I think this is the first Olympic team camp that has ever happened like that. So I don't know. I think it's fun.
Clarissa, I'd like to backpedal just a little bit and ask you a little bit more about your development. And Mike already alluded to the fact that you were a multi-sport athlete. And, you know, we were even visiting a little bit about this beforehand. But could you give us a little bit of depth on your career and what really took you to the point where you became a national, you know, a world-class athlete? What took you to that point growing up, and some of those things that in those elements that may have helped you get to that particular point?
Okay. I would say as a young kid, I was always pretty competitive, right? No matter what sport it was besides gymnastics, because I was like, I'm not going to be competitive in gymnastics. But like swimming, I always thought I wanted to be the fastest and the first. Judo, everything, right? Judo, swimming. Like Mike Clayton said, I played water polo and then wrestling. But I really think like what got me to develop towards the world class level was like working on the details of everything. Recognizing like my competitiveness took me so far, right? Like I felt that was in me, and that like I wanted to be better. I wanted to get better. I wanted to learn something new. And I think that's why I chose wrestling. You know, like there came a point in my life where it was like, do I go judo? You know, it's something that I grew up doing and I love, you know, or do I go wrestling? And to me, obviously the opportunity to wrestle in college was there. And I know actually to this day, if that opportunity wasn't there, I probably would have gone judo route, because I would have thought my career in wrestling would have ended after high school. But I chose the wrestling route because one, the college opportunity, and then two, it was new. Wrestling was a new sport to me because I started when I was a junior in high school. So it was still a lot of learning and understanding of what the sport really, is beyond like obviously like having more points scored than them or pinning your opponent, but just understanding like even freestyle. What is freestyle? I didn't even know what freestyle was coming out of high school. So I think I like desired learning on top of that. So that was kind of like my development through my college years. And then when it came to being at the training center, it was the details, the details of not only technique, but like my mental state, right? What am I telling myself? What am I putting in my body? Like it's just like a well-rounded package that I had to focus and work on being my best self when I step on that mat. So.
Absolutely love that. And in that same vein, how has that carried over for you into your coaching? I mean, there's the obvious, right? Whether or not it's the technical side of things, but I'm particularly interested in, and I think a lot of our coaches that are listening would be very interested in some of those fine intricacies that you were talking about, whether it's the nutrition, the mental state that you trained your mind a little bit more than maybe you were when you were a high school athlete, et cetera. How did you carry that information over into your coaching philosophy and how you deliver that and work with your athletes?
Yeah, I think when I first started coaching, and I'll say I feel like I'm like, as always, I still learning, growing from everyone around me, and like this is my 4th year coaching. And at first, I think a lot of it was me like sharing, and it still is, sharing experiences that I've encountered and went through. But now I feel like, going through courses or leadership classes, it's like, I really want to understand what the athlete knows and understands, because that can help me navigate how I can best help them. So I think that's, in general, for me, the approach that I take, whether it's technical or not, it'd be like, just pulling information of what they know and seeing if there's any areas that I can like help plug holes in, if they have any areas where there's little gaps or whatnot, and really it's just trying to understand who they are, how they process things, how they learn, and what they know. So that's kind of my approach on how I can best help them. So
still
everyone's different.
One of my favorite clinics, you and I got to do the UWW clinic in LA. And I think that was maybe your 1st or 2nd year at USA Wrestling.
Yeah.
I was intimidated. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to like work in this group with Clarissa Chun.
No.
Like, it was like so much fun. And you were just right away, you were just like the coolest person in the world. And I'm like, wow, like this is awesome. So we like just seemed to hit it off. And it was probably one of my favorite people to work with. And we've got such a great staff. I mean, everybody top to bottom is awesome. But it's always been a blast to work with you because I think of you seem like to have like a very quiet way all of a sudden like bringing so much information. It's not overwhelming, but it's almost overwhelming. But you present it in such a way that it doesn't ever seem overwhelming. Have you had to navigate that with your athletes? Because you know so much about the sport and you've got those details. How hard is it to communicate that sometimes to your athletes or to other coaches?
So I think for me, the challenge is because I am like, my voice is soft. It doesn't carry, right? Like, so that's what's hard for me. Like, that's something that I need to work on because, when you're in the corners, I need a voice that can be more demanding, like, and, there's times where I feel like I can be very direct and whatnot. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, Clarissa, calm down. Are you okay? Like, and I don't know, like I said earlier, growing up doing judo, that like judo philosophy is considered the gentle way, like, so I think there's a lot that I still need to learn and grow for myself, but getting my messages or details across, I think exactly what I was going back to is, what parts, does the athlete know, what parts of whether it's the technique or whatnot, the athletes don't understand, and how can we help them better understand. Sometimes using analogies really helps, make things stick for them. And like I said, each athlete is different, because there could be an athlete that I would try to ask questions, like what we learned in that educator course, I find very helpful. But if I did that on one athlete, she could be like, what do you mean? Like, why are you asking me this? Like you don't think I know? Like she could be defensive, because that might not work for her. She might want more direct, tell me what to do, I'll do what you say, kind of way. And just reminding the athletes when trying something new or different, just slow down, because sometimes it's easy to like fake what you really know by going fast. And if we slow it down, then we can really understand the little details and intricacies of where we need to be, kind of thing. So.
Clarissa, I'd like to go down a rabbit hole just for a moment. That something that you just brought up that I think is really worth at least talking about. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you don't have that voice, right? That's something that that maybe comes from the judo background, and that it's more of a passive, suggestive coaching philosophy, right? But I think if you look around and you look at some of the different types of coaches that we have from the men's side, you have guys that are pretty out there and, pretty loud. But you also have the Cale Sandersons and the guys that you have to acknowledge, those guys are getting it done, so with that said, and I've also talked, to some of our national team athletes, and I do think that many of them appreciate the calming sense of stability from the corner, and I do think that you're right. You mentioned that every athlete is different and you have to know your athlete. And, Mike and I have even shared about this in our conversations about making sure that, like when we travel, that if you're coaching a particular team, we usually ask them what kind of cues and things you want to hear from your coaches in the corner, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that there's a lot more people or more athletes out there that want to have that stabilizing, I'm not saying soft-spoken, I don't know that that's the right word, but certainly that calming presence in the corner, like, hey, you've got that, you've got this, I've got this, we're good, we're fine, we've been here, done that 1,000 times. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Mike, I'm sure that you would have something to say about that as well, but I do think it's important. And again, knowing our audience, primarily coaches that are going to watch this, that we maybe go down that hole just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think no different than like how we like coach or teach our athletes. I think athletes, can gravitate one way or another, I mean, I had a variety, like Coach Terry Steiner, he wasn't like in my face on me, like very loud and whatnot, and then in contrast, I had Coach Sammy Henson, and he's just like a ball of fire, like, come on, let's go. Let's, like he get me amped up, and I would love to be kind of both. Can I be both? I would love. People would think I'm probably crazy though, but like I think sometimes some of that comes out of me at moments, in the practice room. I feel like maybe just like silly analogies and just whatnot, just being in their face or whatnot. But yeah, no, I don't.
That's not just part of being bipolar and going.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say bipolar. I was leaning more towards the side of being a chameleon. Being able to go one way and then changing colors and going another way.
Whatever fits the environment, right?
Yeah.
How more do you relate to one type of coaching when you build a relationship with a coach? And if you've already built that relationship, does that give you more ability to maybe be a little bit more intense with an athlete?
Like meaning working with another coach, you're saying, asking? Or
Yeah, like working, either working with another coach or to work with that athlete. Like if you really want to push that athlete, right? If you don't have a solid relationship with them and then you try to push them, they may not trust you enough, right? You may not have enough of that. So like, do you feel like one style versus another has been more acceptable for you to give trust to when you were as an athlete?
Yeah. When I was an athlete, I definitely felt like you tell me what to do, I'll do it. You tell me jump, I'll how high you want me to jump, I'll do it, kind of thing. You know, I never questioned like my coaches in that way. Whether I gravitated towards one or another, I don't know. That's a good question. Like I really just try to take everything and just see what best fit me or worked for me, as far as technically, like mentally, like tactically, whatnot. I never was the type that was like would be like, I don't know if you know what you're talking about or whatever, you know. I never like shut any of that out. And I think it was just, maybe it was because of my upbringing. It was always the philosophy in judo of like learning from anyone and everyone, you know, that, you know, if you're a white belt, challenge yourself, go with a yellow belt. If you're a yellow belt, go challenge yourself and go with a blue belt. And, you know, like, obviously if you're challenging yourself up, you know, if you're the up being challenged by like the developing, you know, judoka or whatever, then it's like not having that, that ego that, oh, I'm blue belt, so I should be whooping, you know what I mean? Like, so just having this open-mindedness of who I am as an athlete. And I think that's exactly, you know, how I approach in coaching too, because everyone's so different, you know. And when Coach Jess and I just did a development camp, what was it, a week and a half ago in Minnesota, and you know, even working with the development athletes, I will tell them, you know, like there's no one right or wrong way in the sense, you know, there's just different styles. What might work for me because I'm 4'11" might not work for someone like Kylie, who's almost 6 feet tall, you know, like, so just trying to, you know, understand, like help them understand that there is no one way, you know. That's the beauty about wrestling in that sense, you know. It's just like different styles, different like body types, different tact, whatever, you know. Like, so I don't know, sorry Mike, I might have just gone on a tangent. This is why
no, this is awesome. Any chance to hear you and your philosophies and your thoughts, this is a blast. So how does surfing work into that? You living in Colorado, there's not a whole lot of that going on. I know you're a big surfer.
I know I might have to find a river that has like, or a lake with a stand-up paddleboard or something to work on my balance. Because, man, whenever I go back home, it's too far in between now that like it's a shoulder workout just to paddle out. I'm like, hey, I challenge myself. I'm like, hey, I'm still getting up on the board, so that's good.
Is that more of a cross training for you, or was that more of a recovery and relaxation, or?
Like for me when I was growing up, like surfing, it was just fun. It was just like, this is fun. I'm not competitive in this. I get my butt beat by the waves, you know, that's fun too. It's a work, maybe cross training, but I never looked at it that way, you know. It was just like a fun hobby. So.
That's awesome. Coach, what do you got?
What's been your quick question? What's been your biggest challenge of the transformation from Clarissa, the wrestler, to Clarissa, the coach? What's been your biggest challenge in that regard?
Having confidence, you know, and you know, I feel like as an athlete, you know, whatever you like, and even as a coach, however much you put in, you know, like is hoping to help that athlete, right? But as an athlete, everything that I put in my body, everything that goes through my head, right? Everything that I do, from conditioning to the wrestling and whatnot, is in my control as an athlete, as far as, and I'm controlling what I can do out there on the mat. As a coach, it's sometimes challenging. Like how do I, if you see your athlete kind of like just not there and you need to bring them back, like how do I get them back, to in this moment? And that's challenging. And then having confidence in like myself as a coach. I don't know. I don't know why. It's just there's some things I feel like very like, oh yeah, I got this. I understand this and whatnot. But in the moment, in the corners, it's like having that confidence that I am going to be able to help this athlete if necessary, like in this moment, right? That's the challenging parts for me. I don't know. And really the day-to-day as far as, each athlete is growing and getting better themselves, and getting what they need to, because there's so much ups and downs in the sport, and just being able to be there for them and like, I guess, not make it harder for them, I guess, not confuse them. Like sometimes I feel like I might be confusing you guys right now.
No, not at all. We had John O'Sullivan who came in to talk to our Silver College. He talked exactly about that. He's like, he puts up words on a board and they're all in white letters. He said, read them, and you can read them really easy. And then he puts up those words, but the words are in colors. So blue is in yellow. And so instead of saying the word blue, you have to say the color that word is in. And it takes you so much longer and it drives you crazy. And at the end, he goes, a coach's job is to take away that confusion and bring you back to the simplicity of the sport. So I love how you said that, and so important for coaches to do. I love that.
That's a way better analogy than me trying to explain what I was trying to say. I love that. That was really good.
On. I love it.
This
is what's so cool.
Clarissa, this might be one of the tougher questions, so be prepared for this one. Get ready. I don't want to confuse you either, but what could our USA Wrestling Coaches Council, other coaches across the country do to help with women's wrestling and in particular, maybe even women's coaching? It appears to me that women's wrestling is on fire, like totally on fire. As you know, Missouri just initiated state championship 2 years ago, and unbelievable. Great kudos to Greg Stahl and the state of Missouri, my backyard here, but other states are doing the same. But that doesn't mean that we should sit on our hands and say, it's just going and we don't have to worry about it. What, from your perspective, needs to be done? And if there is any part that the Coaches Council can play in that, what is that can help?
Okay, so if you are in a state that doesn't have girls sanctioned wrestling yet, sanction girls wrestling first.
On cue.
That was not planned.
But I didn't know you were wearing that either. So
I know. No, yeah. So if you're in a state that doesn't have girls wrestling yet, open those doors up, get it sanctioned. Give these girls these opportunities to wrestle, because it's a sport that I don't know how to repay it back in the way that how much it's given me. And then, like the state of Missouri, like awesome opening those doors for the girls to be able to show up and like just have exponential growth across the states. Just keep those opportunities open for those girls. Have eyes on them, give them the intention that they, like you do the guys, give them those opportunities, get them out, get them exposure to competitions, just give them those opportunities to learn and grow, not only in the sport, but as development for themselves as people, right? As human beings, and really, if we can get to a point where we can say wrestling, rather than boys wrestling and girls wrestling, we're just all wrestling, then I think we're in a good place, So Yeah, I think that's what it is. You know, like opening those doors is one thing, but making sure they're getting, you know, the growth and development and help from the coaches along the way, because it's one thing to open those doors and then just kind of push them to the side and this is where they're at. No one's like nurturing them and helping them grow, then that just is, you know, then girls wrestling will just fall, you know. So I think it's a great time for women's wrestling. It's so awesome to see like male coaches embracing and like opening their doors to high level athletes around the world. You know, you got Helen and Jennifer Page, you know, training at Penn State with Kel Sanderson and Cody Sanderson, and you know, Mark McKnight, and then you got Macy Kilty training with Coleman Scott Jamil. Like that is amazing. You know, what I would love to have been trained under, you know, I mean, Terry Steiner is great. Sammy Hansen, I was lucky he opened his doors to me, you know, but, you know, more and more high level coaches, you know, opening those doors for women. But the second thing that you mentioned, Coach Haggerty, was the interesting fact of opening those doors for women to be coaches, you know, as well, you know, for, you know, and it would be great to pull back, you know, the Sarah McMahons and, you know, like, you know, around the sport. Like, I know some have gone off into their own careers, you know, in different routes, and it's so good to see, you know, like Randy Miller coaching, and trying to think like Takara. It would be great to get Takara Montgomery back to coach, you know, as well. But opening those doors for female coaches. There was a leadership program through the IOC that Coach Jess and I went through, the Women's Sports Leadership Academy, and it was so interesting that they were talking about, like, you know, at the Olympic level, they finally reached the point of around equal, like, male and female athletes, like 50%, like equal amount of participation, like close to, right? But the interesting fact that it was, and I could be wrong on the percentage, but it was really low. It was like 3% of female coaches were in the Olympics, you know, coaching in the Olympics. So and that was like part of like the reason why they wanted to do this leadership course for women, because it was like, we want to grow this pool of women to be able to coach at high levels, you know, as well. But also understanding that we as female athletes have to be open to open those doors for female coaches as well, right? Because sometimes, you know, we're so used to having those male coaches, male high-level coaches now, that, you know, how do we, you know, open those doors for the females to be able to coach high-level female like athletes? Am I making sense? Does this make sense? Sorry. I just feel like I'm just rambling on.
You know, I think that's exactly what I was asking for, Clarissa. And just a couple of weeks ago down at the trials, I was staying at the same hotel as some of the Sunkist folks, and had a chance to visit with Trish Saunders. I hadn't talked to her in quite a while. And I mean, just her breadth of knowledge of this, not just the sport of wrestling for females, but the breadth of the sport across the board is absolutely amazing. And we need more of that, you know, absolutely. And whatever, like I said, whatever we can do as a coaches council, you know, I think I, again, can speak for our group that we would love to try to accelerate that effort and trying to move women's wrestling and women's coaching wrestling along at maybe a little bit faster clip. But we need to take the lead from you guys. You know, we need to take the lead from athletes, former athletes like yourself, former coaches or coaches like yourself, because I guess we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know, and we're still learning. I have a lot to learn. It's overwhelming though, at the growth and to see the excitement behind the women's side of the sport. And so again, we would entertain any of those thoughts and what you think we could do to help you guys as a national staff. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's great. I think yesterday, I think we were talking, Coach Jess and I were talking to Yaru Washington with Beat the Streets LA, and he was wanting to do something like that, kind of like a all women's coaches mentorship like thing to help coach like the Beat the Streets like athletes in programming, and he's always thinking about women and how to help women and girls in the sport of wrestling and coaching. So I think I appreciate all of you guys for thinking about the female part of the sport, you know, like wrestling.
I just hope you're training. I just hope you're training hard for our next takedown go. So you better be prepared.
As long as it's not a bike ride, because you'll crush me in a bike ride. Although you are strong, Coach. Hey, you know, Jakara has asked me to bring my judo gi in. I will go take down Sophia.
She wants you in the gi, huh?
No gi.
I want you in a judo gi, and then we can go take down.
You're gonna choke
I will
him
grab you. I will throw you in an osotogari so fast you won't know what hit you.
Wow, I'm impressed. You know, no sotogari. Oh man, now I'm really scared.
Goodness.
Oh gosh.
So how jazzed are you with this team? The team that we've got going to Tokyo coming up? Wow.
I know, right? Wow is like amazing. Oh my gosh. So ecstatic. Oh man. There's a bet going on that hasn't been like really said out loud to everyone, but Terry did say that if the U.S. women's wrestling team comes home with 6 Olympic medals, he will wrestle in veterans. So.
Oh my God!
Wow,
He's ready.
That's worth it. That's worth it. Just doing that to see that happen.
Yeah.
Peg and I will pay for his athlete membership.
Yeah, right.
100%. That's exciting.
Right, and it can be done, you know, and so it's so exciting.
Okay, so that's what Terry committed to.
What
did you commit to?
Oh gosh. I don't know. They're trying to get me to wrestle veterans because they're saying that old too. So
I don't think they have an age group for me anymore. I think they ran out of A, B, C, D. They have to go to like double B, double C. Oh goodness.
We'll put Terry and you together. No.
Opposite sides of the bracket.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I'm so excited for what's ahead. I mean, you know, with the Olympics coming around the corner, it looks like wrestling is sort of getting back to normal. I know that there's a lot of state freestyle championships coming up. We've got regional competitions coming up. Mike, from the national perspective and what's on the calendar, there's a lot of things happening right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got women's nationals coming up in Irving, Texas in the first week of May. I know they've got the UWW junior and senior nationals are going to be in Coralville here at the end of the month of April. And then UWW 15 and cadet nationals, U15 cadets are actually going on tomorrow in Wisconsin Dells. So yeah, wrestling's been going crazy and we're hearing from coaches getting their certifications all the time. So copper and bronze, jump in and get them.
100%. You know what? It's so exciting to believe that we're kind of back at it after the break that we had to take. But it seems like, you know, if there's ever a group that can respond and recover, it's the wrestling community. And it certainly appears that, you know, we're taking advantage of these opportunities now. And it does go to show too, that we did a lot of things right during that time period, both at the, you know, the intercollegiate level, scholastic levels, freestyle levels. There were some pretty good decisions that were made by a lot of administrators across the board to protect our sport and get us to the point where we're at today.
Yeah, it was scary time to have to sit in on some of those meetings. I know, Clarissa, for you, right? Like, how do we train? Where do we train? When do we train? What does that look like? And So it's got to be exciting to kind of be moving back in a better direction.
Yeah, it feels like pre-COVID again. Like all those tournaments that are coming up is like back to back, week after week. So
do you think it was easier for wrestlers since we do like health and medical checks at tournaments anyway? This is just another like, okay, just do my temperature, do this, do that. Like, was that easier for wrestlers to start to make that pivot?
No, I think it just depends on the individual. Some people don't like getting COVID tested either. So.
I don't blame them. Sometimes those swabs are a little bit rough.
Well, I was fine until the swab came out my ear. When they put it up my nose and it came out the ear, that's when I was like, whoa, that's far enough.
That was an earlier swab from a few months ago. I know how that is.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, man. Well, Clarissa, is there anything else that you need to tell us before we sign off on this edition of our Heads Up podcast? You've got to have something.
Oh, gosh.
Tell us something really exciting.
Words of wisdom.
I'm a woman of...
And she was going to say a few words and then she cut out.
Put me on the spot like that, Coach Hag.
Well, you cut out anyway. I think so. It worked out well for you. So you get a break on that. But I will tell you from my perspective, like I said in the beginning of our podcast, Clarissa, I was really, really excited when Mike brought you up and said, "Hey, let's get Clarissa on." And because I know a little of your history, and from times that we had a chance to share, in the practice rooms to restaurants and just visiting. You're a special person, and you are such an ambassador for our sport, not just for women, but for wrestling, as you mentioned earlier, in general. You're such an ambassador for our sport. We're so blessed to have you in our community. We thank you for everything that you've done, and so excited that the Olympics are coming up soon. We expect some pretty exciting things out of the girls and the guys as well, but we'll definitely be watching, and we're so excited to have you today and appreciate all your insights.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to live up to your guys' level. You guys inspire me all the time. I just need to keep learning and growing from you both. So.
Well, we appreciate you so much. Mike, anything else before we jump off real quick?
Yeah, when Kenny Rogers passed away, they were running a special and they were talking about some different interviews, and they asked him about who he was as a person. And he said, the most successful people I know are the people who, when they see how they look at themselves, when they see how other people look at them, and then when they see how those people really are, the closer that those three perceptions are, that determines success. And I would say if there's anybody that I've had the honor of working with that matches those three any better than you, I'd like to work with them too, because I think you are the definition of understanding, this is who you are. And so thank you for your leadership in our sport as a coach, as an athlete, and just very fortunate that Mike and I get a chance to work with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Well,
you're the best.
Thanks again, Clarissa. For Mike, Clayton, Clarissa Chun, I'm Mike Haggerty, and we'll be back soon with another edition of Heads Up. Thanks for tuning in.